me, my opinion of it, it was god awful. There were two jokes that landed, but I don't think they were the jokes they were trying to make. And let's see. I liked that they clearly demonstrated they had no idea what a lawyer show is supposed to look like. They also don't want to know what a comedy is supposed to look like. And there's a lot of problems with it. I still see the CGI as a problem. She changed height and shape just walking into her own office in one scene like 4 times. So there's a lot of inconsistency in the visuals, the writing. Ultimately, it leads me to continue to ask the same question I have now been asking for 3 weeks. Who was this show targeted at? Who is it for? I still have no answer, and lots of people have offered them. ATN just offered a suggestion of who might be consuming this product, but I can't even think that it's a wine moms at this point anymore. I don't know who this is for, and I think that's its biggest
this
failing.
Was made for the TikTok crowd.
I still don't agree with that, but I understand.
I think this was made for Jessica Chow.
That too.
Yeah, quite possibly.
This is a glowing example of what Paul has brought up, where they're basically making shit for themselves.
Yeah, kind of. And to be fair, many great creators have made shit for themselves, but those creators had taste.
They had talent. I say they're making shit for their restaurant attending Hollywood friends.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
that's what I mean. That's not for themselves, as in I think what you're referring to.
They're doing to impress their friends. Exactly.
Any talented individual creates art for themselves and then hope the rest of the regular hoi polloi likes it. This is a completely different, self-aggrandizing experience.
Yeah. And if I may add to that, I had like 3 takeaways from the episode. One, She-Hulk and the twerking. I mean, was that supposed to be empowering or degrading? Because I saw it more as degrading than empowering, like a completely joke. And also, Jennifer Walters, what a shit lawyer she is. She's a completely useless lawyer. Granted, I get that they said that no one in this writer's room know how to make a court drama. Yeah, we can tell. Because if I had that woman as my lawyer for anything, I'd be worried.
You're right, why. Andre. The guy who's way too sexy to be a lawyer is a better lawyer than she is in the show.
Yeah, I was like thinking, okay, here's where you make some arguments. Like, now you just don't wait for the witness to show up. Now you actually present to the panel exactly what's going on here, rather than just freaking out and panicking. And oh my God, Emil Blonsky and the Abomination, hippie Emil Blonsky, cult leader.
It was
Emil
like a cartoon.
Yeah, with his own cult family. I was like, dude's a mix of Ezra Miller and Charles Manson with his family.
It's a big love thing. That's what it is. That's what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Paxton's big love.
Don't they see that that's actually freaky? That's like cultish.
Not to them.
Probably to them.
I think that's the point. Is that they think it's a joke that he's going to be rehabilitated.
Correct.
On a meditation ranch with 7 or 8 wives. And it's all going to be happy bliss. That's they think it's absurd and funny. And I mean, it is to a point, but there's no real. They didn't go anywhere with it. They couldn't go anywhere with it.
And it can't go anywhere. It's a one-off joke they thought was funny.
Yeah.
It's one of those writer room jokes where they went, "Oh my God, having all these chunky women in love with this guy." I don't know. To me, as putting my executive in charge of production hat on, a couple of things. Number one was the thing I pointed out with regards to the fact that the best character in the entire episode was the jerky asshole lawyer from episode 1 and 2, because inadvertently they actually gave him a personality by accident, and the writers drift towards the easiest, like water flows to the lowest point, right?
Yep.
And he had that scene in court, and thinking that he was with Megan the Stallion and the woman who portrayed the shape-shifting elf, that was really good. In many ways, that was the best part of the show, because it was built around a character that was very clearly defined. We can argue whether he should have been defined that way. That's another discussion. But you could really see from that news report where they quickly flashed up the user hatred that was on social media towards She-Hulk that mimicked what they thought was people were going to talk about, as if they were talking with what's her name from Obi-Wan Kenobi, where they were warned ahead of time of the hate that
Moses Ingram.
Yeah, Moses Ingram. And so I made a joke that they had a precog for shit posting. Like, really? You have already anticipated what the fandom menace is going to say about your show? Don't you have other things to preoccupy yourself with than these petty little future arguments that you think you're going to have? They don't give those of us who are commenting on this any credit at all. They think of us as fleas. It's so that was really
actually it's ticks, but same
ticks. Yes, to me, I thought that was showing just what they were preoccupied with, this navel gazing of the show.
Some navel gazing would actually be more interesting in some parts. Actually.
Yeah, and then the other thing too is, and this goes along to my sitcom rules,
to see her
is that
navel.
We now have the one guy who was helping Dennis in court, who doesn't have a personality, basically the potpourri boy who showed up at in this episode.
That's the one I was talking about. That's too pretty to be a lawyer, but he's still the best lawyer in the show so far.
However, he still doesn't have a point of view, doesn't have a personality. We don't know where he stands on things. And then we brought in the woman, the black lawyer, who's also in the comic books.
The one-shot lawyer?
The one-shot lawyer. And again, nowhere do we have a scene with all members of the superhuman group talking about strategy on how to deal with a meal, where we get to learn about each of their characters and what they think about it. That would be a really good scene. That was missing. Those are the things that bothered me about the show.
That would be a courtroom scene, and that's exactly what this writer's room said, that they don't know how to write.
Well,
you're right. Could you imagine Abomination as Abomination with his big ass stuck in a tiny chair next to the judge answering questions? That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That is funny. Well, Your Honor, I didn't really expect to knock down that building. It was an accident. It wasn't my fault. See that?
The Hulk threw me, but we.
Yeah,
I was simply following orders.
Well, he could see insanity had just turned into a freaking monster.
Yeah. Well, that was my bigger problem with the show overall. Is that was not Blonsky, right? It's like, who is this character? This is not the character. It's a cartoonized. It's like, it reminds me of whenever in a cartoon when they have a villain go good, right? They always have this term that it's like, who is this person all of a sudden, right? Like, the best version of it is when they had Skeletor go good in the Christmas special, but at least that had reason behind it. This
is the lack of skill of these writers.
Yeah.
They just don't know how to. You can't break the universe. It's like in episode 1, they made fun of the science of the Hulk. No, you don't F with that. You have to believe in all that science.
They have no concept of being earnest about the subject matter with which they're telling. And Correct. I think the reason the Dennis character was so well defined is because that's probably the character every woman in the writer's room hated so much that they put effort behind making sure that they hated him. And it's like, well, you have to do the reverse of that for all the other characters as well. You have to tell us, what is Jennifer Walters' point of view? Why does she rely so much on that Fran Drescher assistant who only has like 2 scenes? Why do we have introduction to this pug guy who used to be like on the CW for a year? And why don't we see anyone else in this law firm? Like, there's no point to much of what's going on. The only positive of this 3rd episode was the fact that the only conflict that was a high concept conflict is that Dennis guy getting extorted for like $200,000 by the Asgardian
Right.
elf, and it's like that's a problem. That is a subject of a show. Client gets swindled. You have to represent him to get the money back.
And let me show you. I mean, and to prove how bad the writing is on this, the idea that She-Hulk would have been forced to be the lawyer for Dennis, who she hated, that's proper writing.
Well, let's talk about Dennis for a minute.
That's actually forcing conflict onto your main character for them to deal with, and that's how you get your drama.
Do you agree, Script?
Yes.
This is what drove me nuts when she went, well, I'm not doing it, and they went, okay, fine.
Here's my main issue with here goes
anything ever easy for your main character.
Never.
Nothing should be easy for your main character. Rule number 1: main character stuff.
Well, here's the problem with all the characters in the show, and I think you guys are hitting the nail on the head here.
There are no characters.
Dennis, well, that's the problem. And I was just going to say, Dennis is a big, grand example of it. He's probably the most fleshed out character you have here, right? And that's the thing, is he's a caricature, right? He's not an actual character. He's a caricature. He doesn't have any... First of all, I'm sitting here going, how does he still have a fucking job? Andre's right. There's no way this guy would make it in the real world more than 2 days. Maybe a day at most. Because what are his skills? You have to show us that, sure, he's an asshole, but they put up with him because of this. And then you show him in the courtroom where he's this super fucking lawyer, right? Or something to that effect.
Yeah,
they have no characters here.
PAs in the office, and because he is actually good, but he's an arrogant jerk because of that, maybe because he's so good as a lawyer. That's a character.
Exactly my point. Yes.
We don't get any of that information.
Exactly my point. Yes.
Actually, they put on display like his what they are pushing out there as his insecurities, because he's always saying, well, you just did that for publicity or whatever, the superficial thing, attacking Jen's accomplishments.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah. Here's the other part too. He is written to try and hide his flaws. He is the exact opposite of a Saturday Night Live sketch. He will not reveal that he doesn't feel like he deserves to be dating the real Megan Thee Stallion. Like in an SNL sketch, he'd be like, I can't believe I'm dating them. I totally don't believe I totally don't deserve to be dating them.
They did have one bit where he...
No, they didn't.
Well, because he goes, I she kind of, admit it's partially my... Oh, that's right. Never mind. That was a stupid fucking... Witch, never mind. You're right. Yeah, they fucked with me twice with that stupid shit, and that thing was stupid too. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm glad you liked it, Paul, but I thought that witch bit was dumb.
The witch bit,
where she kept flipping in and out of people.
Except that here's the thing, and somebody threw it in the chat. The writers might suggest that he has the job because it's Daddy's law firm. No, it's a DA's office.
It's a district attorney office.
Yeah.
You're the people or the state.
Yeah. So
which makes it even less likely that a person like him would ever work there, let alone even exist in the
unless
first place.
He's really good at his fucking job, which that's the problem you have.
No,
that's the problem we have here. Yeah.
We don't know that. That's the problem.
Yeah. And in the modern world, though, the world we exist in right now, right? Not the slights of 50 years ago, but in the world we live in now, his behavior towards women would not be tolerated one day.
No.
Unless he's very good at what he's doing. Because I used to date a woman who worked for City Hall in Toronto, and one of their key negotiators has many allegations, provable allegations against them with regards to their inappropriate behavior with women. And they refuse to fire him because he's that good of a negotiator. He can get away with it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is the guy who put away a bunch of people and all that stuff since he works for the DA office or whatever, right? Like, they don't want his reputation besmirched. That makes sense. Yeah. Like,
but
anyway.
But his physical appearance, they hired someone who was kind of a rat. If he was like a super good looking guy who got away with stuff, and because, my parents.
A John Hamm type, exactly.
Yeah, John Hamm. It would have been way better, but like, just there's so many things I have problems with this. If I was in that writer's room, I would be putting up 3x5 cards, and I would not let them out of that room until they sorted out every single main character. Really, I just don't get just the basics they didn't cover.
But they don't even get whether or not they're making fun of themselves, making fun of the show, or anything at any point in time. Let's focus on the cameo thing. Right, that pissed me off because
where she goes to I actually kind of giggled at that. But speaking of cameos, we have somebody joining us, Valiant Renegade. But go ahead, Culture.
No, yeah, and I unfortunately have to dip out, but the cameo bit it played out in the real world at the same time, because you had entertainment magazines, trades, actually talking about, well, don't expect cameos in every show, right? And then that exact line plays out while she's in the car breaking the fourth wall, telling her, well,
but that's the closest thing to a joke culture. That's the problem.
That came out of her, at least.
Well, yes, but at the same time, you have the writer and the trade papers telling you that don't expect cameos every week, when we know for sure that this show is completely built on cameos. And I mean, it's like that's either overly self-aware, completely lacking in self-awareness. I don't know, but for whatever reason, none of the jokes landed for me the way that they wanted them to. I laughed twice, but not at the joke they were making, and that's just, it's not a good television show. Of course,
I laughed at one. There was one joke during a news release where when they were interviewing her, and then they went and Jennifer Walters and She-Hulk will be back with hair tips and
hair and dieting tips. Yeah, she's like, what?
I thought was a good that I laughed.
I didn't. I thought it was horrible.
Too hard to get there,
because what
I agree with you.
News presenter would ever say something like that? When has that ever happened? Because I saw the point there. That was their way of saying, like, oh, look at what we women have to go through. Here you have this female superhero, and what do men do? Men only want her makeup and workout tips.
No, that's women want that. That was a joke against women.
I don't know that it was.
Yeah, it was.
If it had been a female presenter, but again, this show is so fundamentally misandric in everything. This is a truly man-hating show. And when you have a male presenter saying that, I cannot give them the benefit of the doubt that this is what women want to hear. I could have given that had it not been for all of the other overt misandry. This was just more of that.
But you don't know what his pronouns were. Andre, you didn't know what his pronouns were, though.
This is true. He may have been a they, them, for all we know.
In that moment,
that aside, he was passing as a male. Okay, he was passing as a male, and someone passing as a male degraded her, completely ignored all her achievements, and just wanted to go for makeup and workout.
It's just a bad joke. It was just a lazy joke, but I laughed.
No, I think it's more insidious than that.
Okay.
Well, I look, I thought that the casting of Hamada was great there at the end as the newscaster. So, but I have to step out. Thank you for having me again, gents. Hopefully we get a chance to talk about the boredom of Amazon in the future. I will be listening to you as I work. Have a great one, everybody.
All right, take care.
Take care, Culture.
And just as Culture leaves, we are joined by a renegade, a valiant renegade. How's it going?
Good morning, everybody. How y'all doing?
Doing excellent. Or at least as well as it can be considered, considering all the stuff we'd have to be watching in the past 24 hours. So before we move on to the Rings of Power, what's your thoughts on the most recent episode of Twerking She-Hulk?
Well, it's about the same as the Rings of Power. I haven't watched either and don't intend to, but I've seen enough online to look. I'm at that point now where I am going to put the fault on the marketing department, at least up front, because if you cannot create a trailer or clips or something online that is going to engage your most ardent supporters, your biggest Marvel audience, the old school folks that have been reading the comics for decades on end, then you screwed up. And, same thing kind of goes for Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. I don't think that there's been a whole lot that has gotten people in. As far as She-Hulk goes, every time, that I saw something leading up to the show, it was like, this just doesn't look, this looks like more of the same, that we've gotten on every other Marvel television program since they started this on Disney Plus, where let's change things up. Let's make things funny. Everything's a joke. And it's kind of getting old hat. And She-Hulk was never one of the characters that I followed a lot. Not to say that I disliked her in any way. It just wasn't one of the ones on the top of my radar. So it was always going to kind of be a long shot. But I just don't get what's going on over there at Marvel. I think the biggest problem is probably the fact that a lot of these people that they're hiring in to do the marketing and to maybe even do the writing, of course, Paul and Script can speak more intelligently on the writing side than I can, but at least from the marketing and the business side, it just, I see this a lot, not just in places like Marvel or other movie studios, but all across the different industries. You're hiring people out there, frankly, they're younger, they're less experienced, they're trying to bring in a quote unquote new perspective in all this. And most of these people that are doing this are just, well, we have to go after people like us, our own age groups, our own audiences. And they seem to completely forget or deliberately neglect, for one reason or another, the already established audience that's out there. You don't have to sacrifice one audience to get another. There's this mindset out there that you have to do this for some reason. And that seems to keep happening. And that's been a big problem, especially with phase 4. Let's throw phases 1 through 3 basically out the window, and let's go after a whole new audience here. And it's like wondering why the viewership tanks, the merchandise sales have tanked. Everything is just going the wrong direction because they're taking something that already had an ardent fan base, and they're chucking it and then trying to start over with a whole new group of people that they're not even sure up front are going to bite onto stuff like this. And apparently they're not. So that's where I'm at.